Robinson, welcome.
Thank you. Let us pray. Father, we come to you this evening asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that might affect us all and those around us. Continue to guide us, for all that we do here today reflects our level of service to the community. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have several presentations this evening. First presentation is a presentation of CFPUA Annual Report, and at this time I'd like to recognize Mr. Kenneth Waldrop, who's the Executive Director of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. Mr. Waldrop, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, honorable council persons. I very much appreciate the opportunity to bring to you our 2023 year in review. As you may recall, CFPUA's bylaws require that we hold an annual meeting in November where the executive director presents our board with a report on the health of the authority. And thereafter, I'm required to present copies of that report to our sponsoring agencies, City of Wilmington and New Hanover County. So I'm very pleased to report that the condition of your authority is strong and financially sound. Indeed, it has improved year over year. I can highlight a few milestones to include a long-planned consolidation of the Sweeney and Richardson water systems, the completion of our first customer service satisfaction survey, the litigation of DuPont, Chemours, and Corteva in the Delaware Court of Chancery to prevent those companies from shielding themselves from ongoing liabilities, and the adoption of a $112.9 million operating budget this year. Now, your water and wastewater utility continues to grow, with over 2,073 meters installed and a record $24,864,000 conveyance of infrastructure assets over the last year. Both of these growth indicators were higher than anticipated. And despite a rate increase that was necessitated by inflationary pressures and the pollution of our upstream neighbor Chemours, our water and wastewater services are still the most affordable in the region, with the average amount spent of income with our utility below that of Brunswick County, Fayetteville, Onslow County, and Pender County. Also, our system development charges remain some of the most affordable in the region, demonstrating our commitment to the economic vitality of our community and our city. Good governance is the hallmark of a well-run utility, and our utility continues to receive national recognition for the operations and the management policies of our board. Our strategic plan was formed around the goals and objectives of our board, and it's based upon the effective utility management principles, our industry's primary guidance for best governance practices. The National Association of Clean Water Agencies Excellence in Management Program honored CFPUA this year with gold recognition, and this honor ranks us among the top performers of wastewater utilities in the nation. This year, our utility was also selected to represent all peer utilities in an EPA-led process to update our industry guidelines. Now, consolidation of local government entities or services is perhaps one of the most difficult and labor-intensive works that a local government can undertake. And such consolidations are never taken lightly, but when done right, bring value to all involved for decades. The work of evaluating a potential consolidation between the town of Wrightsville Beach and its utilities and CFPUA is nearing completion, and we hope to have a final recommendation in the near future. But in a show of support for utility consolidation statewide, our state delegation from the North Carolina General Assembly secured significant funding to support a utility consolidation if the boards and councils of the town, CFPUA, New Hanover County, and the city of Wilmington all agree that it's in the best interests of our community. CFPUA also remains deeply involved in the advocacy at local, state, and federal levels on the topic of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, and the contamination of our drinking water. We continue to host academic research on PFAS and PFAS treatment. We remain a national leader in PFAS education and municipal treatment solutions. In many ways, your authority is literally writing the operational book that as many as 5,000 other utilities can turn to nationwide to address their own PFAS challenges. And this year we have a very successful first year of operation of your GAC facility that has given us very valuable data. As of this calendar year, we've offered 25 facility tours consisting of more than 430 individuals. These are state and federal delegated representatives. These are utilities from across the nation. They're engineering firms, and they are leaders in academia. They're all coming to our facility to learn how we have tackled and solved the PFAS problem. Now, we are the beneficiaries of an incredible legacy. Like the elders who plant trees, knowing they would never live long enough to be shaded by that foliage, our great-grandparents and our grandparents bequeathed to us a wealth of infrastructure, an investment made generations ago to ensure our community could treat wastewater and provide clean drinking water. And like those generations that came before us, it's our turn to make sure that the generations of the future have the water and sewer services that they need. So CFPUA has a 10-year CIP that includes more than $500 million of planned capital improvements, 86% of which will go to repair, rehabilitation, or replacing infrastructure that has reached or exceeded its useful life. This year alone, we're investing $77.4 million, our second largest ever investment. And this is an investment to our community and our city's future. Key to this vision of serving future generations is the replacement of the Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant. Originally opened 51 years ago, this community asset now stands ready for total replacement. Our board has begun the necessary work to provide for the next 50 years through the award of a $13.1 million contract to cover phase one of a progressive design build project. Construction may begin as soon as 1 year from now, but no later than early 2025. Now, we remind ourselves every day that infrastructure management is a key function of any utility. And as good stewards of your infrastructure, we have projects that span the full spectrum of potential activities in the water sector. Here on this slide is a short excerpt of just a few of these major projects to ensure not only the orderly growth of our city, but its sustained use of water and wastewater. And finally, as a special unit of local government, we are honored to uphold the public trust and hold ourselves to the highest fiduciary standards. As verified in our latest annual comprehensive financial report and audit, as presented in October to our board, your authority is healthy and well managed, with revenues to cover expenditures as well as fund a robust and growing capital improvement program. We have taken very prudent steps to ensure our financial needs are met through measured, well-thought financial policies and community investments. And here is where I want to take a point of personal privilege and note that our board and your board appointees run your authority as a business, and they treat that money as their own. And it's some of the highest standards of my 31 years that I've observed in local government in terms of ensuring that funds are spent wisely. So I thank you for the opportunity to serve those individuals. So finally, on behalf of our customers and our staff and our stakeholders, I first want to thank you for the partnership that we have with your staff. They are steadfast friends and peers who will pick up on the first call. So I thank you for them. And I also want to thank you for your service and for our appointed members to our board. I stand ready for any questions.
Mr. Waldrop, in respect to the litigation that was filed in Delaware against Chemours and the DuPont, how is that going in respect to that process? I know that they're trying to shield themselves from, I believe, any having to reimburse these communities that they have harmed with this PFAS contamination in our river, and the work that you folks have done to eliminate 99.9% of it from our water supply. So where are we in that process?
So you may recall last year we became concerned that a company that we call New DuPont and Corteva, two of the three companies spun off from old DuPont, had shielded billions of dollars worth of assets and placed all the liabilities in front of the company we were litigating, Chemours. So we went to the Court of Chancery, and we litigated those companies there to ensure that they could not shield their liabilities if for some reason Chemours could not meet the liabilities that they owe us as a community. That case, the judge just recently agreed to hold that case to see how the primary case in North Carolina was going. And they also, the judge also chided the other side in terms of not properly representing themselves and telling the court all of the facts. So I believe that we've got a fantastic case in Delaware. I believe strongly that we have a strong case here in the Eastern District of North Carolina, and that eventually, the arc of justice will bend towards supporting our community and getting restitution.
And the total amount of money that has been spent to date for those investments that you folks have made to protect the water quality of our community?
I believe those expenditures are approaching and have exceeded $60 million. And as you're probably aware, just to operate the new granular activated carbon facility is $4 million. To put that in perspective, the Sweeney Water Treatment Plant, which was rebuilt in 2012 to the height of technology as deemed appropriate at the time, the operation of that plant was $4.9 million. So we've almost doubled the cost of treating water here in addressing the pollution of our neighbor Chemours. So again, I would publicly call for them to live up to their corporate values, which they espouse regularly in advertisement, and come to us and make restitution to their downstream neighbors.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan.
Can please tell everybody where that $60 million has come from?
It's come from our ratepayers.
Thank you.
Every one of our ratepayers are paying for that now.
Which is unfortunate. Mr. Jordan.
Could we go back to the slides, I think 7 and 8, about the Southside plant? I just wanted to ask if you had any updates as far as planning for that goes for potential methane capture.
That's in the mix. We have a design build team, and we have incorporated into the guidance for that design build team our sustainability committee's guidance in recent documents. So CFPUA has a number of committees, just as the council does. One is sustainability. We have some sustainability goals in terms of greenhouse gas reduction, and we are challenging that design build team to offer us a business case around reduction goals that also makes sense for the investment we make in the facility. So combined power and heat is a traditional approach to reusing methane, but we're also seriously considering things like photovoltaics and battery storage is an alternative to generator use. So we're going to look at a full portfolio of business smart sustainability activities that we might be able to bake into that plant with the intent of showing a return on them for the life of the plant.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure that a lot of the folks here know that methane is right after carbon when we're talking about the climate crisis and making sure that that's one of the greenhouse gases that we're concerned about. So
Yes, sir.
thank you. I'm really encouraged to hear that.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Waldron.
Thank
Good
you.
report. Next presentation is presentation of the city's annual comprehensive financial report. This time I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Barnett to introduce Mr. Rob Bittner of PB Mailers.
All right. I don't have anything. Present, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett.
You're welcome. Great introduction.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for allowing PB Mayors to continue to serve the city. We certainly do appreciate it. I want to first start off by commending your finance department. This is what they put together, and this is what we opine on. So I'm not sure if you need something to go to sleep with tonight, but page 197 is very exhilarating. And actually, to be honest with you, I have no idea what's on that page that just came up. So in any case, I do want to say thank you to that. They put a lot of hard work into that, and we ask a lot of questions and poke a lot of bears and are much a thorn in the side when we're here. They always answer our questions with a smile on their face and in a very timely manner, so we really do appreciate that. Just so you know, we did present to the audit committee previously, so this is going to be an abbreviated version. I will say, though, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to stop me in the middle. I'll be happy to answer them at any point in time. So as auditors, we are charged with opining on your financial statements as to whether or not they are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. We can issue 4 types of opinions, ranging from adverse, which means that you are not in conformity with GAAP, or the highest level of opinion that we can provide and highest level of assurance is an unmodified or clean opinion, which the city did earn this year. So in addition to the opinion on the financial statements, in accordance with government auditing standards, we are required to issue a report on your compliance with laws, regulations, grants, and contracts, as well as identify any what are identified as significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. What does that mean? So there are 3 levels of deficiency in internal control. There's the control deficiency, which is an item that we identified during the course of our testing where something may not have been reviewed appropriately, or an issue where a misstatement could occur in the financial statements. You have a significant deficiency, which is slightly more severe than that deficiency, that warrants attention with those charged with governance, which is why it would be reported in this report. And then the highest level of deficiency is a material weakness. This is the worst deficiency you can have, which means that this deficiency in control either has caused or could cause a material misstatement in the financial statements. Happy to report that we did not identify any compliance issues that needed to be reported in the gas report, nor did we identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. So, in addition to that, we also issued 2 additional reports, one on your compliance with federal grants under the Uniform Guidance, and one with your compliance of state grants under the State Single Audit Implementation Act. So in addition to our opinion on your compliance, we also would identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control over that compliance that we would see during the course of our testing. During the course of our testing, happy to say, we had no instances of noncompliance with federal or state grants, nor did we identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control over compliance related to federal or state grants. So those are the big items that we do, so commend this the highest level that we can provide really across all facets there. In your packets, you should have received what we call our auditor's communication to those charged with governance, or the what was previously called the SAS 114 letter. It says report to the audit committee on it. In here, I'm not going to read through this verbatim, but just pointing out in here, this is required communications that we need to present to you based on auditing standards. A few highlights on there. We did not have any disagreements with management. There were no significant or unusual transactions that we identified during the course of the audit. There were no audit adjustments, which means that the trial balance of the general ledger accounts as they were presented to us, we did not have to adjust them at all to make them in accordance with GAAP. And there are no unrecorded misstatements that we are aware of that are not clearly de minimis to the financial statements. Only other significant item on there I'll bring to your attention is that this year the city did implement GASB statement number 96. For those of you that may recall, last year they implemented statement number 87 related to leases, which added right to use lease assets as well as a lease liability on the books for any leased assets for greater than 12 months. The GASB Statement 96 did the same thing for subscription-based information technology arrangements. So any kind of long-term IT arrangement that is for cloud-based services would now be recorded as a right-to-use asset and then also have a corresponding liability on the books as well. So those items are appropriately reflected in there. In addition, on that letter, you will also see all of the accounting estimates that the city has made and the methods at which those are made, and that we agreed with the methods that the management chose to do that in there.
Could you
Yes,
lift
sir.
your microphone up a little bit and talk directly into
Yep.
it?
Is that better?
Much better, please.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
Was being
My mistake. Do I need to repeat anything? All right, so first off, I want to start off by thanking, no, I'm not going to start from the very beginning, but in any case, with that, additionally in that letter, any communication that we had with management is included, so any written communication, you also have a copy of that as well. So with that, I'll try to make this very brief unless you would like to go in depth through the financial statements, but otherwise I will be happy to entertain any questions.
We did meet with the audit committee, and you've been serving with PB Mayors how long? 5 years?
So our office joined PB Mayors in December of 2020.
Okay, and you've actually been working here in Wilmington.
I want to say I have been working on the City of Wilmington's audit since probably 2013 or 14 would be my estimate.
All right.
So in some capacity, in my capacity as a partner, it's been since 2020.
Okay, and we were really pleased with the report that they presented. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And thank you to the staff and for all the work you folks have been doing, getting all the information necessary to do that audit. Next presentation is presentation of the Annual Clean Energy Advisory Committee report. And this time I'd like to recognize Dave Mays, our Public Works Director, and Dave will introduce Mr. Richard Smith, who's the Chairman of the Clean Energy Advisory Committee. Mr. Mays, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to come here and give you a brief update about what this committee's been doing over the past year. I would like to take a moment and just give them a little bit of recognition. As you said, Richard Smith, he's our chairman for the year. He's here. Our vice chairman, Mr. Sean Sullivan, is here. Committee member Valjean Estes, who's a new member this year. Phyllis Goodson is also a new member this year. Kat Pullman, who's been a member, has left the state, and we now have a vacancy in the committee. So if you know anybody who's looking, we're seeking a replacement for her. PJ Klein, Andrea Bennett, Lindsay Halleck, all not only do they bring their interest and their expertise, but with a little bit of irony, they bring a lot of energy to this committee. And we greatly appreciate that fact. These folks really want to see us lead by example and help move the needle in the direction towards clean energy. So I just wanted to recognize them briefly. A little bit of background about this committee. Back in 2020, we established the Ad Hoc Clean Energy Task Force. This was a volunteer panel of 32 very diverse members. Right in the beginning of COVID, we learned how, not only did we learn how to meet over Zoom, but they managed over 9 months to develop recommendations and a final report that included recommendations on how to map our path forward towards clean energy. In 2021, Mayor and Council signed resolutions that adopted 2035 and 2050 goals recommended by the Clean Energy, the Ad Hoc Task Force, and they also established this 9-member committee. Includes diverse subject matter experts, and their role really is advisory. They provide recommendations to staff. Staff brings those forward in the most appropriate manner so that we can move forward with the recommendations as needed. Just a quick reminder before I ask Mr. Smith to come up, these are the clean energy goals that were adopted by Council. 2035 basically establishes a 50% clean energy goal and a 50% electrification of the city's fleet. 2050, those goals going to 100%, recognizing that as future technology allows for that advancement, that's a caveat there. And then also, committee felt very strongly, the Ad Hoc Task Force felt strongly about including the community-wide goal, that we really want to set an example that we want others to follow, and that's led to the community-wide goal. And with that, I'll ask Mr. Smith to come up and talk a little bit about what we've been doing over the past year.
Thank you, Mr. Mays.
Good evening, Mayor, committee members. I appreciate a little bit of your time this evening.
And just speak directly right to that mic because we're having.
Is that better? All right.
Closer.
So we're going to talk about a little bit about what the committee's accomplished over the last year. So first and foremost, energy efficiency initiatives. So working with city staff, we've helped them identify and target different energy efficiency initiatives for city facilities. Some of these include optimizing building management systems, the typical kind of LED retrofits that we're all familiar with, building equipment upgrades, things like that. We're also working towards a fleet transition study. As you saw in our 2035 and 2050 goals, part of that is transitioning to either a low emission or EV purchasing for our fleets. So the place to start for that is a transition study to see what our needs, what the city needs are as far as vehicles and fleet go. So the committee voted to recommend utilizing. The city will be receiving an energy efficiency block grant. It's a federal grant that the city will be receiving funding from, and we've voted to recommend using a portion of that funding for this fleet transition study. We also voted to support the city moving to join the NC Clean Fuels Coalition, and with that vote and then the action by city staff, they have proceeded to create the Piedmont and Coastal NC Clean Communities faction of the Clean Fuels Coalition. So we're now a part of that. We also voted to recommend implementing and presenting to City Council a sustainable building policy. The goals of that policy are to lower the costs for all of our new building retrofits and construction, improve the energy efficiency so the operating costs are less. We want to improve indoor air quality, comfort, thermal comfort, air quality comfort for the city staff and those that are visiting with us, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and to set a positive example in the community and kind of a standard for those moving forward. In addition, we continue to advocate for clean energy legislation support. So we recommended that the city sign a letter of support for the Solar Grant for All, which is a federal grant that the state has to apply for, that will provide funds to make solar energy, photovoltaics more accessible to all the different communities across the state. As well as that, we've also participated with other communities, cities, organizations in their efforts to just kind of maintain and move forward this clean energy initiative statewide. We also received a presentation from some MBA students at UNCW that looked at the ad hoc task force recommendations and chose one to use as a project. They chose the Growing Community in Wilmington Through Sustainability Initiatives, which was a garden composting, backyard composting initiative. And so in speaking with them, they highlighted a lot of the different social, environmental, and economic benefits of a program like this. We spoke with the head of Parks and Rec. He came in and met with us, and we're hoping to continue that partnership with the professor of that class at UNCW to see if we can move the needle on that and kind of move that project going forward if it's feasible. Another priority for us is the MWBE initiative. We feel that that should be included in all the things that city staff does, whether it's operational, purchasing, construction, all those different kind of things. And so as we go forward with our recommendations, we always make sure that that's part of any recommendations that we make to city staff. So in 2024, what is the focus going to be? So last Monday, we had our first meeting of 2024, and we did kind of a whiteboard session to reevaluate and make sure that we're focusing on the goals that the ad hoc task force established and see if there are any new things that we need to be including that we're not at the moment. So for this year, we're recommending to staff, and we're hoping to help staff focus on some more energy efficiency initiatives. The reason that energy efficiency typically comes up as like a #1 priority for us is we in the industry always say that the cheapest and cleanest unit of energy is the one that we don't have to use. So anytime we can reduce our energy usage, it saves both money and those greenhouse gas emissions. In 2024, through some benchmarking, city staff has identified that our police headquarters is our highest energy user, which is not really a surprise, large facility in operation 24/7. But that will be the target of some of their initiatives for this coming year. In addition to that, we're hoping to recommend city staff to be able to issue an RFP for that fleet transition study that I mentioned earlier, so we can get the ball rolling on some pilot programs and seeing what it is exactly that the city operations needs for their fleet. We also will continue to advocate for clean energy legislation support. Last year, we became Soul Smart certified, which is basically a certification that says that City of Wilmington is a solar-friendly city. It means that there's a certain level of ease for businesses and for residents that are interested in solar in purchasing and acquiring and the permitting process that goes through that. We're hoping to work with our partners in the county level and get the Soul Smart Silver certification for this year. Like I mentioned earlier, we're also hoping to continue working with the professor at UNCW on their community garden and composting initiative, which would involve our Parks and Rec department, and seeing if there's a potential site and some partners that we may be able to interact with to help try that out. And then something that moved up to #2 on our priority list this year through our whiteboarding session was communications, both internal and external. We found that a lot of different city staff, there's differing levels of awareness of the Clean Energy Task Force, the initiatives and the policies through the city. So we want to make sure on the internal level that everyone's on the same page and understands what it is that the city's goals are, and also making sure that we're communicating that to our community members and that they understand that we are moving, working towards these goals and moving forward with them. So with that, thank you for your time. What questions can I answer for you or hope to get you answers for?
Mr. Spears?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Good. Thank you for this good update.
Sure thing.
How many times do you meet throughout the year?
We meet monthly on the second Monday of every month.
Okay. And I'm asking because the mayor and I, we kind of initiated that Clean Energy Task Force to begin with, but I kind of feel like I'm out of the loop now. and May, you don't have to update me every month, but if you would just shoot me a little bit of information going forward, I'd love to have it.
So we can do that in a number of ways. Obviously, the door is always open to you. If you have time to join us at one of our meetings, we'd certainly be happy to have you. We can also, fair enough. We can also send you like a recap or some talking points that come out of our monthly meeting. I don't think working with city staff, that shouldn't be a problem.
I'll take the talking points.
Sounds good. I'll get
That's
it to
fine.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, you folks have done a lot of work over there. We really appreciate it, and continue on. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Next presentation is a presentation of the strategic plan by Mary Bigu, who is the Deputy City Manager. They'll be making that presentation to the council. Mary, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I am glad to be in front of you tonight to present the proposed fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 30 strategic plan. Some of the information I'll present tonight you have seen already, but we wanted to bring it to a full council meeting for the public at home to also see. So I wanted to begin tonight by reminding us all of what strategic planning is. And for us, the intent is to provide a strategic focus for our community and for our staff. It helps us to provide stability and opportunities for those who live, work, and also who build their businesses here. And for us as a city and for city staff, it helps set a common goal for all of us. So as some may recall, the city of Wilmington had a strategic plan that was developed and adopted on June 21st, 2016, that was completed in fiscal year 2020. I wanted to begin by highlighting some of the differences between the proposed plan and the previous plan. The previous plan was rather large. It included 6 large focus areas. The implementation plan was not included, and it was used mainly in the budget process. As departments worked through it, they used it to ask for items in the budget and those pieces, and it was really specific. And for staff, it was almost too large to manage. A difference here in our proposed plan, it has 5 focus areas. It is consistent with each focus area, has 3 objectives and 3 initiatives. And we were very intentional in that, in terms of making sure that it was something that was manageable and something that we could implement and actually put to work here in the city. Just as a reminder, a strategic plan is a living document. And so as a city council, we will be bringing this back to you at least twice a year. And while you may see things that are not necessarily included in the plan, we can add them. But there are also opportunities moving forward over the next 5 years for council to change and improve the plan. We also have been working diligently on developing what we call an implementation plan, so that we can take the strategic plan and actually make it a living, breathing document and something we use here in the city of Wilmington as we do business. So a little bit of background about how we got here. This has been a long process that even started before me. We hired TransPro back in February of 2022 and had a contract with them, and they assisted us at the very beginning of the process. They helped us conduct some community surveys. They did some employee focus groups. At the time, they also interviewed city council to understand your goals and objectives. We've provided workshops with our executive staff. We had some council workshops where we identified and talked about your short-term strategic focus. And then in January of 2023, I brought to you at a budget work session some feedback and the focus areas that we would be proposing. We worked diligently with staff over many months in developing and formulating objectives and initiatives. We reviewed it with the governance committee. And then if you recall, back in November at your budget work session, we brought the full proposed strategic plan to you. So when we think about the strategic plan and how it's designed, as a reminder, there are 5 what we call key focus areas. And these are basically those high-level goals that are in line with council and the community's priorities. And then underneath them, we have what's called objectives. And so that's at a high level, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we looking to do as an organization? And then underneath them, we have initiatives. And so what specific activities are we going to do or evaluate to ensure that we meet those objectives that we've identified? As you look at the proposed plan in front of you, you'll see it's a little vague in some areas or a little broad. And some of that is to allow us to have a little creativity because there's no one right way to get somewhere. And so the goal of this is, as we work through it, is for us to challenge staff and the organization to think strategically and bring back proposals for city council consideration that are in alignment with your objectives and your key focus areas. And then last, but probably the most important, is we're working to design performance measures. And that will enable us to report to you and to the community about how we are doing, right? How are we accomplishing our objectives and in those key focus areas? And so we as a staff are continuing to work on developing those performance measures that will go along with the plan. So this chart, you also have a very large handout in front of you that highlights the 5 key focus areas with the definition that goes along with them about what we as a city are striving to do in each of these areas. I'm going to spend just a few minutes going through each one. I'm not going to read you each of the objectives or strategies that go in, but I would like to highlight just some areas within each of those proposed focus areas. So the first is in the area of housing and neighborhoods. And it's about creating a thriving and inclusive and affordable community of neighborhoods. And as we recognize in Wilmington, they are diverse across the community. Our objectives and our initiatives are focused on the availability and affordability of quality housing options. It's about looking at our city policies and codes. It's really about collaboration, recognizing that we as a city are not going to solve this problem alone, but how can we work with others in the community and in the region to address this? And it's about fostering those vibrant communities, connectivity in those pieces, and lastly, looking at public engagement. Our next focus area is in transportation and infrastructure. And this is really about developing an efficient and accessible and sustainable multimodal transportation network and city infrastructure. It's really about improving our transportation options and reducing congestion. It's looking at alternatives, because it's not just about the vehicle that we all ride in, right? There's many different forms of transportation, and it's about exploring what those are. It's about improving our roadways, our sidewalks, and also our trails, which are also transportation networks. And then it's about maintaining and improving the overall city's infrastructure, so our buildings and those major infrastructure that the city owns. In terms of public safety, it's about creating a safe, healthy, and engaged community. There's a focus on reducing violent crime, vehicular safety, which we don't often think about, emergency management. It's about expanding and continuing the work that we have with people experiencing homelessness or drug addiction. It's about improving the quality of life through our minimum housing standards. And there's a piece in there in terms of objectives on youth involvement. And so how are we involving our youth to address this earlier? Organizational excellence is really just that. It's about how do we internally and as an organization achieve excellence. It's about focusing on recruiting, developing, and retaining our diverse workforce. It's about our efficient use of our resources, employee safety, customer service. There's parts in there about looking at a 311 center. And so how do we overall communicate with the public? And it's about improving our accessibility to our services with our public. And that could be everything from language access to even how do they enter and exit buildings and facilities and receive services. And last, but certainly not least, is about creating economic development and cultural vibrancy. It's about creating an environment for economic growth, job creation, and cultural vibrancy. It's about focusing on attracting, but also retaining our businesses. It's looking especially at our regional partnerships and how do we enhance them. Looking at the city's position as a nationally recognized entertainment, cultural, and tourism destination. You'll see items in there that are about our amphitheater and about our downtown. It's about our Riverwalk improvements. And we all know that downtown parking is something important to discuss when we look at our economic development and our cultural. So what are our next steps? We would like to continue to collect feedback from City Council. I know I've reached out to all of y'all to see as you move forward. If you have anything to send to us, we're more than willing to sit with you and have conversation. We would ask that we'd like to bring this back in February for council's consideration of adoption. And what that would do is help us put this in place as part of the budget process so that as of July 1st, we are ready to go and put this plan into action and make it livable here for our employees, but also for the community. We're going to continue to develop our performance measures and bring those back to council as well, and the implementation plan, which we'll update you on as we move through the budget process. That was a lot of information, but I am here and I have staff available that can also answer any questions or take any feedback.
Yes, sir. Mr. Spears?
Mary, can you go back to, thank you for this presentation. Can you go back to the slide that had the focus on public safety?
I'm sorry?
The slide that had the focus on public safety.
Yes, sir.
So here, the vehicular safety, I want to focus right there for a second. So I've been saying it for probably my entire first term when we talk about vehicular safety, but also the safety of pedestrians in our community, where I jokingly say that we need to turn up the street lights, but it's not a joke. It's really not a joke. When you're traveling on these streets, it's pretty dark. I mean, I don't know if it's the new headlights we have in these cars or whatever, and if anybody in the audience wants to agree, you can, but I know it's pretty dark for me, and I think I can see pretty well. But I don't know if we need to do a study or if we need to pay attention or whatever we can do. We need to do that, because I hear those complaints throughout this community, throughout the entirety of this community about it being too dark. And I mean, we can see when we watch the news, people get run over and hit and all sorts of things all the time throughout our community. So, I mean, any little thing that we can do to make an adjustment where people are safer and we can reduce the incidents that happen in our community as it relates to poor lighting or vehicles and pedestrians, let's do that. And then I'll segue just a little bit, because maybe a week ago, it wasn't even a week ago, it was Thursday. Well, last Thursday. Some citizens came to me and talked about the cross-section or the lack thereof at 10th and Princess. You know, that part of our community is starting to thrive. It's the soda pop district, and a lot of businesses have moved in, and there's more activity, but people are concerned that when they come to that intersection, they can't see. So they have to pull way out into the road before they can even attempt to go. And I've mentioned this before, and I don't know, we were supposed to do a study. I don't know if we did or if we didn't, but those young ladies also told me that they inquired about it and submitted an email or something. So I just want to put that out there. I also want to let citizens know that we don't take any of this stuff lightly. Of course, it's in our plan, so you know, the strategic plan, and so we should be a little more in tune and strategic about it, especially if I'm hearing it, you know what I mean? And I just want to do my due diligence to come in and report it to you all as I hear it out in the community. So, thank you. Somebody take notes.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next presentation, and our last presentation for this evening, is a proclamation naming January 15th through the 21st, 2024 as Community Risk Reduction Week. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Wendy Gianna King, the Wilmington Fire Department Community Risk Reduction Coordinator, and the proclamation will be read by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Mr. Barnett? Okay. Meet her at the front.
Would Wendy please come forward? How are you? Thank you. Hey, G. All right, thank you, sir. Good evening. The proclamation reads, whereas the goal of the CRR is to reduce the occurrence and impact of energy events for both community members and emergency responders through deliberate action in the area of 5 E's of education, engineering, enforcement, economic incentive, and emergency response. And whereas community risk reduction is a data-informed process to identify and prioritize local risk, followed by an integrated and strategic investment of resources to reduce their occurrence and impact. And whereas the value of community support for local, state, and national partners to address community risk is recognized to meet the demands on members of the 5 services, and whereas Monday, January 15th, 2024 is Martin Luther King Jr. Day and is nationally recognized as a National Day of Service and an opportunity for Wilmington to reduce the risk in each area of the city through a series of educational and other programs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the week of January 15th through 2024 is proclaimed Community Risk Reduction Week throughout the city, and encourage city citizens and city leaders to learn more about this grassroots initiative of fire service professionals across the nation to raise awareness of the importance of CRR and in our local fire services and city, and the opportunity to make Wilmington a safer and healthier community. I'm presenting to you today on behalf of Mayor Bill Selfo. Thank you so much. Congratulations. All right. You want to say anything?
Of course I want to say something. I would like to say that this is pretty fantastic. The fact that Community Risk Reduction Week is happening tonight, being proclaimed tonight, the same night that Mary just talked all about the strategic plan that is filled with community risk reduction. And Councilman Spears, your conversation about vehicular safety is something that Wilmington Fire is very well aware of and have been kind of in the trenches with and about for years and years now. So congratulations on your new strategic plan that's filled with risk reduction.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work. I think he wants to take a picture. It's good? Yeah, sure. All right, that's it. Come on in, Chief.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Our next item of business are consent agenda, items 1 through 3. Are there any items any council member would like to hear separately? If not, what are the wishes of council? We have Mr. Waddell?
I don't have any items to pull, but I would request to be recognized for a brief comment after the consent agenda is voted on.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Joyner. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Luke Waddell. Mr. Waddell?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules of order in order to consider a resolution related to the City of Wilmington's position on the tolling of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge.
Okay. You want to make that motion?
I do make that motion.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Luke Waddell. Mr. Waddell?
Thank you. Certainly, Mayor, fellow members of council. I believe it'd be helpful for me to include a brief presentation prior to introducing this resolution. As you guys are aware, I do serve as one of the city council representatives on the MPO currently, and I'm in the role as the vice chairman of our MPO. The MPO is set to vote at the end of this month on whether to consider tolling as a viable option for the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. The reason we're being asked to consider all options to include tolling is that the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge has thus far not scored high enough in prioritization to warrant funding via the Highway Trust Fund. However, and calling attention to some of the slides here, there's a significant amount of funding that is outside of the STIP. Of the NCDOT's roughly $7.5 billion in spending for in annual spending, $5.2 billion is budgeted to the Highway Fund, which is outside of the $2.3 billion that's allocated to the Highway Trust Fund, which is what the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge has been considered under. Next slide, please. The Highway Fund, which is the $5.2 billion fund from the previous slide, primarily supports projects that maintain the state's existing transportation system, as you see in the slide, to include general maintenance, roadside environmental activities, resurfacing highways, replacing bridges, paving unpaved secondary roads, and state aid to municipalities. Funds are dispersed across North Carolina based on need. I would call your attention to the language stating that the Highway Fund is to replace bridges, not the STIP. To my recollection, the NCDOT has never presented our community with a true replacement option via a 4-lane bridge like we have now. Next slide, please. If we were to be presented with such a replacement option and decide to move forward with a true 4-lane replacement option, then the state would be required to pay for it via the $5.2 billion in the Highway Fund. Next slide, please. This is pretty interesting. The Alligator River Bridge replacement is an example of how pure bridge replacements can be prioritized differently than other projects. The Alligator River Bridge replacement had 5 separate submissions, I believe, and all scores failed prioritization, similar to how the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge has attempted to score and failed. Yet lucky for the people of Tyrrell County and Dare County, this project was fully funded, receiving $177 million from the state and the remainder from a federal grant. And that project's set to start in summer of 2024. The average daily trips of that bridge is roughly 5,000. We can move on to the next slide, please. There's an excerpt from state law that shows how the Alligator River Bridge was funded through the STIP, even though it consistently failed to score high enough in prioritization. Again, similar to how we are being told that the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge is failing in prioritization. Next slide, and it's the last one. Finally, reason why tolling, I don't believe, is an acceptable option for replacement of this bridge. The firm who recently performed our most recent traffic analysis regarding the effects of tolling on the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge predicted roughly a 10% diversion rate for traffic. That's studying how changes in commuter behavior would react to a toll. However, that same firm performed a similar study in Louisville for the tolling of I-65. And when they performed that study, the same firm, they were incorrect on their traffic count by over 50%. And the result was that the tolls that they projected more than doubled in a 4-year time frame. Studies that far off, they change traffic patterns forever. And so with that, I would like to move the following resolution for the remainder of council's consideration. Whereas the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge was first opened to automobile traffic on October 1st, 1969, and whereas the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge since its opening in 1969 has been the primary link for US 17, US 76, and US 421 between Brunswick and New Hanover counties, and whereas the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge has been an indispensable conduit for regional transportation and economic development throughout the counties of Brunswick, New Hanover, and Pender, which on average accommodates more than 65,000 trips per day. And whereas the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge is a critical element in facilitating freight movement to and from the most efficient port in North America, the Port of Wilmington. And whereas the North Carolina Department of Transportation has identified the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge as a structure in need of replacement due to its age and cost of maintenance. And whereas the Wilmington Metropolitan Planning Organization passed resolution on February 23, 2022, to urge consideration of all possible options to include tolling in previous proposals to fund the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. And whereas the NCDOT's proposed replacement alternatives and design considerations for the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge currently include the use of tolling as a viable financing alternative. And whereas the payment of tolls has not previously been employed as a financing method for the replacement of any existing transportation facility anywhere in the history of North Carolina. And whereas tolling the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge would impose a disproportionate financial burden on Wilmington and southeastern North Carolina relative to any other area of the state. And whereas tolling would also have an incredible negative impact on the commerce that uses the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge on a regular basis. And whereas tolling would have a disproportionately acute negative impact on traditionally disadvantaged persons. Therefore, be it resolved that the City Council for the City of Wilmington wishes to express its overwhelming resolve against the use of any tolls as a financing method for costs associated with the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. Be it further resolved that the Wilmington City Council hereby challenges the state of North Carolina through the NCDOT to derive a more equitable funding alternative for the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, one that ensures the economic vitality of the region without placing disproportionate costs on the users of an already existing vital regional transportation link. So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Joyner. Any further discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Rivenbark.
I served on the MPO prior to Councilman Waddell coming on the MPO, and prior to the talk of tolls, we considered 12 different alternatives for the crossing of the Cape Fear River, and we slowly and methodically went through each of the alternatives, looking at various things like crossing wetlands, adding cost. And at that time, it was the number of $1 billion was tossed around as to what it would cost to bring a bridge across, because at the time, people were not in favor of the existing crossing because it would have an impact on their neighborhood. I understand that. But at no time during any of those discussions, and we did this for like 2.5, 3 years, the word toll never, ever entered the conversation. And we were talking anywhere from $750 million to $1 billion to construct that bridge. And as I just said, we never discussed tolls. It wouldn't have gotten out of committee or out of the MPO if it had come up. And now all of a sudden we're talking about something that's a less expensive alternative, and tolls seem to be carrying the day with the DOT. It's, I look at this much like I do the city of Wilmington. We pay taxes in the city and we pay county taxes. And a lot of times we don't always get a return on the money we pay to the county. That's just something that's been going on forever. Don't like it, but it's a fact of life. We've already paid our taxes through gas tax and our state income tax, and then in addition to that, we're being asked to pay a toll for something that we should have already paid for. So I heartily endorse this and can't wait to sign it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Waddell, for bringing this resolution forward. I'm very happy to be able to second that. And I just want to encourage folks, this is an election year, not only for president, but for governor's races as well. Wilmington is going to have a lot of gubernatorial attention and candidates coming through. So please, if you're meeting candidates, ask them what their position on this is. Let them know this is a Wilmington issue. This is something that we have a really strong united front in, and this is important to us. And Mr. Rivenbark, you're absolutely right about that gas tax, which I'll remind everybody is 40 cents a gallon.
Mr. Barnett.
I'm in favor as well, and I was always just very interested in knowing the fact that throughout the state of North Carolina, there's never been a replacement of a transportation facility via a toll. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
And I'd just like to chime in, because I served on the MPO many years ago, and when the discussion of the Skyway Bridge at the time, this was a 20-year discussion, and it went away. And we knew at some point in time that the replacement of the memorial was going to take place. But in no time, as Charlie alluded to, was there ever a discussion about tolling an existing road that has been in existence for half a century. It's never been done in the state's history. And I often say that it is a state asset, serving a state asset at the state ports, that serves not only this community, but every community in this state through supply chains and the products that come through the Port of Wilmington. It is their responsibility. It shouldn't be just the people in Brunswick County and the people in New Hanover County that pay for a piece of infrastructure that has been used for half a century, paid for by all of us, and now they're asking us to toll it, and for only us to be told. It's just wrong on every single level. And there's other mechanisms and ways that the state could find money to make this a reality if they so choose. But it's going to be up to them. And as Luke alluded to, if you look at the money that they spent up in the Outer Banks on the replacement there at Alligator River, possibly almost close to $300 million with 5,000 cars per day. Not 65,000 cars, but 5,000 cars a day. They could find money for that. This is an important part of the state, ladies and gentlemen, and we all need to speak up and have our voices heard, not just the elected leaders, but you, the folks that will be using it, and the people that go back and forth on there. They've known about this for over 20 years, and it's finally here. And if we all allow this to happen, then every roadway in the state of North Carolina that's an existing roadway could be turned around and taxed. And I'm very much against taking a public asset of this magnitude and giving it to a private entity to make money on it. It's just wrong on every single level. And it should not have even been brought forward as an option in any way, shape, or form. I understand tolls on new roads, new bridges. I get it. We've seen that happen around the country. New roads, I understand that. But on an existing road, it's never been done in the state's history, and it shouldn't be done now. And if we do this and we lay down and we just say, okay, just do it, every roadway in this state is at jeopardy, believe me. And they're talking about it now, US 1 up in Raleigh, and I guarantee you they'll get a lot of blowback there also because the people up there are just as angry as the people down here. The state needs to be aware of the fact that they have a responsibility, and they should never skirt their responsibility as a state. And to ask the local folks to make a decision about tolling a bridge, which is a state asset, is beyond all comprehension. I don't even understand why they're asking us to do it, because when we ask them for certain things, it's an act of Congress to get a tree planted or to get any permission to get anything done. But on this particular issue, they're saying, we don't want to make that decision. We want y'all to make that decision. I think that's just skirting their responsibilities as elected leaders. So thank you. I appreciate that, Lou. So with that, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Brings us to our next item of business, which is our public information. We have one speaker that has signed up to speak with us this evening, Mr. Neil Schulman, who will be speaking to us about taxpayer services. Mr. Schulman, welcome. You'll be allotted 5 minutes to speak. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My wife and I own a piece of commercial property on Kentucky Avenue. I needed to do extensive repairs to the property due to tenant damages. It would take me several months to do due to my schedule to be completed. I contacted Solid Waste and asked about the different types of material I could dispose of. Other than a large amount of tires, I was told they would pick up different types of materials. They would pick up garbage, yard waste, recyclables, and construction debris in a bulk pickup. In the city of Wilmington, you have 4 different types of pickups. Your green can is for trash, that's every week. Your blue can is for recyclables, which is every other week. Your yard waste is every week. Your bulk pickup is requested the day before, and it is every week if you wish. In over 25 weeks, that's 7 months, I put in requests the day before or earlier and was told that it would be picked up. But it didn't get picked up. I called multiple times and it still didn't get picked up. But weeks later, I'm still dealing with it. On one of the times, the wind blew the recyclables all over the street. My employee and myself had to pick up the recyclables, which took about 3 hours. I also had to take my 6x12 dump trailer, which has sides that are 4 foot tall, and had to be loaded fully 3 different times because the amount of material that was not picked up by the city had stretched over 50 feet. This is a collection of several weeks, 3 times. When I called and spoke to the head of solid waste or a route supervisor, I would be told, we're doing the best we can. That is not a satisfactory answer. I contacted Brian Renner in code enforcement. He didn't have any luck fixing it either. I contacted Sean Evans. He didn't have any luck either, and I contacted him 3 different times. Not one of the supervisors I spoke to solved the problem. I contacted city finance and told them I wanted to dispute the charges. They made no comment except, you need to call CFPUA. I contacted CFPUA only to find out that the city had overstepped its authority by having the city decide what bill I'm going to pay. That is wrong, and I have yet to meet one resident that knows that fact, but I'm sure telling them. I met with 2 of your attorneys. They were very clear that they would not do anything but tell me Boulder Dash. But one interesting thing one said was it was because the city workers were making minimum wage and had not graduated high schools. Her comments reflect her true feeling that she thinks that they must be the dregs of society. That's why the problem exists. They're not worthy of respect or a living wage. As I thought about her comments, I started thinking about comments made by different elected officials, including council members, that people need to earn a living wage. Well, that means you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And you work for them as well. Then I thought about what she said about people who hadn't graduated high school and could hardly read. I thought about some of the extraordinary people who did not graduate high school and could hardly read, such as Albert Einstein, John D. Rockefeller, Walt Disney, Frank Lloyd Wright, Richard Branson, Frederick Henry Royce, Francis Pinot, Joe Louis, whose company, by the way, is valued at $5.3 billion, or David Karp, who quit school at 14 years old and started a little computer company and sold his program that he designed for $1.1 billion to Google before he was 25. Thomas Edison. Then I thought about this, and I thought these are the words that would be said by a bigot. She works for the citizens as well. The driver is the one who drives the route, and where the truck goes as it travels through the city streets. He does not make minimum wage. So there is no excuse for this. I realize things happen, but not over 25 times in every single week. I even sent Sean Evans pictures of yard wigs that was there for over 6 weeks. And that was supposed to be picked up every week. Now, the interesting thing is I had already re-rented the property, and the picture was taken 6 weeks after it was put in the new tenant's name, so nothing's changed. I am disputing this bill because the city breached its contract with me. Since you are the ones that set the terms, it is the City of Wilmington's fiduciary responsibility to provide this service, and not having a method of disputing a bill is deceitful and wrong, and I don't believe it follows the rules of law. As well, I can dispute my tax bill and the rest of my bills except yours. This needs to be changed. Every one of the city employees is supposed to have the citizens' best interest at heart. Perhaps it is actually more important to provide all the service you're supposed to instead of pontificating to the citizens of Wilmington. You might want to remember every employee that they work for us, the citizens, including all of you. Which one of you do not care if you paid for a service and didn't get it? You, Mr. Barnett? You, Mr. Saffo? Your attorneys even admitted the services weren't done correctly, but isn't going to do anything about it. I'm ready to take this to the next level if we don't come to some kind of agreement. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Brings us to our next item of business, which is our ordinances. Item 01 is an ordinance making the supplemental appropriation of $5,000 grant from the South State Bank to the Special Purpose Fund to support the city's housing counseling program. At this time, I'd like to recognize the city manager, Mr. Tony Carter. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Good evening to you, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the rest of the council. Rachel Lecoe, our Housing and Neighborhood Services Director, will overview this item.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. This is an ordinance for a supplemental appropriation of $5,000 in grant funding from South State Bank to support our housing counseling program. The city became a HUD-certified housing counselor agency in 2022. We are the only within the Cape Fear region. Last year, our team served 85 individuals through one-on-one counseling and 223 individuals through our group education classes. This grant will support pre- and post-purchase counseling in our homebuyer education classes through marketing materials, software, and other direct costs. We are grateful for this partnership with South State Bank and continued support of council to make this program happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. What are the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Spears, second. Do we have a second to that? I didn't see the second. It says, okay. So let Mrs. Andrews second that. Okay. Any comments? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Barnett. I'm going to change this. Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item, which is item O2, which is an ordinance making supplemental appropriations in the amount of $9 million to the CDBG DR grant funding from the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resilience to the CDBG fund for the development of Starway 1 and 2 multifamily affordable rental units. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. LaCoe will overview this item for us as well.
Thank you again. So these funds were made available to support the development of affordable housing in areas impacted by Hurricanes Matthew and Florence. Just over a year ago, Council authorized the submittal of an application to the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency, NCORE, to support the Starway 1 and Starway 2 affordable projects. The city was awarded the funding and has executed a subrecipient agreement with NCORE last year to fund this project. This ordinance is the last step in the process and will allow Starway to begin drawing down the funding. In addition to the support from NCORE, the project also received funding from the City of Wilmington and New Hanover County. Upon completion, the project will provide 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units for households earning under 60% of their area median income. That works out to around just under $800 a month for 1-bedroom units and just over $1,000 for 3-bedroom units. As you know, site work has begun on this 278-unit development located on Carolina Beach Road, but the official groundbreaking ceremony has been scheduled for February 1st. Thank you again for your continued support of this and other GAP financing projects. As you heard during the strategic plan, projects of this scale and impact are made possible by leveraging local funds with state and federal funding opportunities. So thank you.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. What are the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance? We have a motion approved by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Rivenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Rivenbark, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading.
Next, we'll have item O3A is a resolution, the acceptance of an upset bid in the amount of $752,500,000. No, $752,500. Okay, I got carried away. Okay, okay. Item O3A, a resolution authorizing acceptance of an upset bid in the amount of $752,500 for the sale of 302 Willard Street. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Our Economic Development Director, Aubrey Parsley, will review this item for us.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Before you tonight is an item which would finalize the sale of 302 Willard Street. To quickly recap, this property became surplus subsequent to the sale, or excuse me, the acquisition of the Skyline Center in July of last year. Staff then received an offer in the amount of $715,000, which was presented to council in October and voted upon to initiate the upset bid process. With that offer, other interested parties had approximately 2 weeks to come forward and present upset offers on this property, which did happen here. An upset bid was received in the amount of $752,500, and that was a qualifying responsible bid that was received. Staff again went through the process of advertising and reopening the bid process to see if anyone would upset this bid. However, no additional bids were received. The process closed at the end of November, and this resolution tonight, we are requesting council accept this offer as it is strongly supported by staff. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? All right. Then I'll entertain a motion. Okay. The motion is approved by Councilmember Luke Waddell and seconded by Councilman Spears. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by the sign aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and it's unanimous. Thank you. Second item is item 03B. It's an ordinance making supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1,847,500 from the sale of surplus properties to pay debt services on the Skyline Center. Recognize City Manager Tony Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Jennifer Moretti, our Finance Director, will review this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, Mr. Mayor. The item before you this evening is an ordinance requesting approval to appropriate $1,847,500 of sale proceeds from the property sales of 302 Willard Street, 1536 South Front Street, and 222-226 South Front Street, and to transfer these funds to the Debt Service Fund for payment of debt service on the Skyline Center properties financed in July of 2023. As you recall, one of the debt issuances in the financing has a variable rate and allows for prepayment of debt without penalty. As we sell properties, the proceeds will be used to pay down this debt, saving interest costs to the city and reducing the liability while also creating capacity for future needs. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions already? This is a good thing.
Yes,
Paying
sir.
down some debt, right?
Very good.
Which is what you've been asking for.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we're going to do this. So we're going to pass a resolution, and then I'm going to ask council if we will waive the second reading option. Is that correct, Mr. Evans? Okay. Could you? You gave me the thumbs up.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay,
Sorry,
very
need to turn
good.
my mic
Okay.
on.
Okay, very good. Okay. So what are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Council Member Joyner. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item has been passed unanimously. And at this time, I will ask council to waive the second reading ordinance. We have a motion to waive by Councilmember Reinbach, second by Councilmember Andrews. In discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. Mr. Evans?
And Mr. Mayor, just as a cleanup matter, if we could go back to 03A, that's been passed, but if we could consider waiving the second reading of that as well.
Can we also waive, ask for a waiver of the second reading on 03A? We do. We have a motion by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Joyner. In discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. Okay? We're good with that, Mr. Evans?
Yes, sir, apologies.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item 04A, which is an ordinance appropriating funds to the Fleet Maintenance and Replacement Fund in the amount of $1,571,000 for replacement of ladder truck 06252. And then accompanying item, which is a resolution, item 04B, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase a 2025 Pierce Ascendant Quint ladder truck from Atlantic Emergency Solutions Incorporated of Manassas, Virginia, for $1,571,000 through the Houston-Galveston Area Council Cooperative Purchasing Program. Sounds like a good government agency to me, but anyway, at this time, I'd like to recognize the city manager, Mr. Connell. Mr. Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve Mason, our fire department chief, will overview both of these items for us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We are seeking your support tonight to appropriate funds to the Fleet Maintenance Replacement Fund in the amount of $1,571,000 for the replacement of 06252, which is a frontline apparatus ladder truck. We A little history behind this, reason for us bringing this to you is we are trying to stay on schedule with our current fleet fund schedule, replacement schedule. This ladder truck is due to be replaced in FY26. We need to order that truck now, not only to lock in today's prices, but to stay on schedule for our fleet maintenance schedule. The turnaround times for building apparatus is anywhere from 36 to 40 months. So we've identified a truck that is already in line for production. And so if we are trying to be a little proactive here and making sure that we stay on schedule, which will not only get our truck replaced when it's supposed to, but it'll also allow us to stay on schedule to get the 5 years minimum as a reserve apparatus for 06-252, which is the truck that will be replaced. This will also allow us to surplus a 1997 100-foot ladder truck.
Okay. We have a question, Mr. Barnett.
Ask what happens to the truck that you're replacing, and it's being surplus?
Yes, sir. So the truck, our fleet replacement schedule is 20 years for frontline service, 5 years of reserve service.
Okay.
And so it's really important that we stay on that schedule. When we do get this truck in service, we'll be able to put the current unit in reserve and then surplus the unit that we have in reserve right now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Joyner?
Thank you. I just want to call our attention back to the presentation that we had from the Clean Energy Advisory Committee and their discussion about the goals for fleet replacement towards electric vehicles and things of that nature by 2035 and then by 2050. And I certainly don't pretend to be an expert on vehicles of this nature. I imagine that vehicles of this nature are particularly unique in a fleet management system. But I did some very quick research and found electric fire engines that are just now going into 5 or 6 cities across the country that are actually cheaper than the number that we see here tonight. I suspect that that number does not include the charging unit that comes with it, but I was just curious if you had any background information on that or if we had explored that.
I have not seen an electric ladder truck. I have seen a number of departments across the country who are implementing electric fire apparatus, pumper apparatus, engines, if you will, but I have not seen a ladder truck. And so certainly when you're looking at these two apparatus, a pumper versus a ladder truck, there is a considerable difference in price. For example, if we were asking for the money to purchase an engine instead of a ladder truck tonight, it would probably be in the neighborhood of $900,000 versus 1.5. So other than that, no, sir, I do not have a fair amount of experience with electric vehicles when it comes to fire apparatus.
Understood. And I plan to support this tonight. I just want to make sure this is on our radar as we're looking at vehicles in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. So we're going to do this with the resolution, which is 04A. What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Andrews, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. Now, when we come to the ordinance, we're going to ask for council to waive the second reading on the ordinance. Mr. Evans, again?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. So we can, let's waive the ordinance. Do we have a motion to waive that ordinance? We have a motion by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. The clerk is confused. I'm so sorry. The ordinance, you said waive, but I didn't have a first reading on that ordinance. So I think you got to do a first reading first and then do the second reading.
Let me read this for the record, please.
Okay, thank
Madam
you.
Clerk. So I'm going to ask the council's wishes for a vote on the first reading on item 04A, which is the ordinance appropriating funds to the Fleet Maintenance Replacement Fund in the amount of $1,571,000 for the replacement of ladder truck 06252. Okay? So we have a vote on that, which was a unanimous vote. And then we're going to ask the council's wishes or call for a motion to waive second reading of the ordinance, which was what we just did. So that was a unanimous vote also. So where am I in the process
Correct.
now?
I just need that first reading first
Okay.
and then the second reading.
So
Yes, sir.
we-
You voted on the second reading before you voted on the first reading.
Okay, we'll go back and go to the
I'm
first.
sorry.
Just to make certain. Okay. All in favor of the 04A, correct? Please, please, we have a motion again. We have a motion by Councilmember Andrews, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. So we have the waiving of the second reading, which we already have in the records. So I'm going to ask council's wishes for a vote on item 04B, which is the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase a 2025 Pierce Ascendant Quint ladder truck from Atlantic Emergency Solutions Incorporated of Manassas, Virginia for $1,571,000 through the Houston Galveston Area Council's Cooperative Purchasing Program. We have a motion approved by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that vote, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Moving slow tonight. That item passes unanimously also.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item of business, which is our resolutions. Item R1 is a resolution amending the Wilmington City Council's Rules of Order. And at this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What you have before you tonight is a report out of the Governance Committee that came out of their October 16th, 2023 meeting. In that report, there were two changes that were authorized to be forwarded to council for consideration. The first was a change to Section 5, which essentially stated that all closed sessions would be held at the end of agenda briefings. So just to be clear that if you're going to hold a closed session, unless it's an emergency measure, you will hold that closed session at the close of the agenda briefing. The second item is to institute some measures that council wanted staff to adopt or have drafted for adoption. And they are in Rule 23, which is the filling of vacancies for appointed positions. Council had previously not had anything on record with regard to how those vacancies would be filled. This specifies that all of your direct appointments, not only including the city attorney, the city clerk, and the city manager, but also including the fire chief and the police chief, will be advertised for filling of the vacancy before actually filling it. And then it sets forth a procedure in there for that process. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Ms. Andrews?
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, who are the council members that are on the governance committee?
The governance committee consisted of Councilman Rivenbark, Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, and Councilman Anderson.
Okay. And then you also mentioned in your letter here that there were other council members that were interested in these issues, or was it just the members of the governance committee?
At the time, it was before the governance committee. It was just the governance committee. I think there was a discussion, my recollection is there was a discussion at one time among members of council with regard to appointments to fill vacancies, but there was no vote taken.
Okay. And may I continue with another question, Mr. Mayor? Okay, so I don't have the report of the committee. What was the concern about the timing of holding closed sessions, and what was the concern about the way that appointments were being made?
I will have to characterize my interpretation of that discussion. I certainly can provide you with minutes from those meetings if you'd like to see those. But my interpretation with regard to the holding of the closed session was that it was better that the council members were more fresh during the daytime as opposed to waiting till the close of an evening meeting and having the closed session then.
Okay, but of course we don't have to wait until the close of the evening meeting. We could have a closed session at 5:30 at night.
Yes, ma'am, you could.
Thank you.
Anybody? In respect to the process when a vacancy occurs and let's just say a number of applicants, I think the number was 4, or if it was beyond 4, the HR director would then do what?
That was what was drafted and is before you for consideration. If you have greater than 4 applicants for that, the HR director is, by your rules rules that are drafted before you this evening, is directed to find whomever he can on city staff or whomever he believes is best interested on city staff to help cull that number down to 4, which would then be brought to council for interview and selection process.
So Tony, I do remember when Chief Evangelist was hired, I think Perf did that search for us at the time, and there were 96 applicants. And I can't remember exactly how that was whittled down at the time, but I think council was then given, I think, 12 applicants to take a look at. It was a large body of individuals that wanted that particular job at the time. And then I believe that when Mr. Martinet was hired, there was a nationwide search for that particular job also. And I believe at that point in time, and I may be mistaken, you may have been here, you may not have been here, there was a group of fire chiefs that were chosen from around the state of North Carolina to evaluate those particular candidates and then whittle that down to a certain number of applicants that the city council could then review. Would we not use something similar to that in that process as opposed to passing it off to the HR director or, giving that all at city council with 96 applicants? And I've been involved in the past search with a chancellor of the university that had 100 people that had made application, and we used the firm that did that for us to whittle that number down to a considerable or a manageable group that we could then take a look at. That's the only concern that I have. I don't have any problem with going outside to look for candidates, if that's the wishes of council, but I would like I think a much more clear understanding in regards to that process, because I would imagine this is a pretty popular area. Those vacancies come around. I'm sure that you get a lot more applicants than normal in this particular city.
Yes, sir. I think it is unusual to employ staff members to winnow down the number of applicants for a manager's position, a clerk's position, or a city attorney's position. Generally speaking, and I'm going to speak from a professional standpoint, not necessarily from the Wilmington standpoint. Generally, if a vacancy occurs and you want to go outside, you'll hire a firm to do that. And that firm will advertise, help you get in your advertisement, in your job description, those things that you think are important to your community. They will put that out, then they will help screen those applicants down to a certain number, whether that's 10, whether that's 4, whether that's 12. It's up to the council as to how that gets done. I do know that with the fire chief, Buddy Martinet, it was a different firm than the firm that was used for hiring Chief Evangelist. 2 different processes, 2 different firms. But both of them were hired from the outside. When positions came open in the city manager's office, the city attorney, and I believe the police chief and the fire chief this last time, we used the services of our own HR director to solicit applications. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how they got winnowed down into the number that were actually considered. I wasn't a part of that process except on the applicant pool for the manager's side. So it is as varied, but generally speaking, you will find if you hire a firm, the firm will do most of the screening for you based upon your input. And then, of course, one would expect that if the HR director is going to be the person selected to do that, that person would do the same thing. And I would think, generally speaking, that it would be a subcommittee of council that would winnow down the number of applications.
I think we did that with the city attorney. When Mr. Joy was hired, I think we did have a subcommittee of council that reviewed those folks.
But that is a generality.
So what we've had here is pretty much all over the board as to how we've done. I mean, not over the board, but every one of them has been done a little differently.
Yes, sir. You've done it quite differently in 3 or 4 different processes now.
Okay, all right. And I know you've been involved in some processes around the state, or at least I've heard you have.
Yes, sir.
With the search of city managers.
Yes, sir.
And is that process that you've been involved with when you've been asked to participate to help find a manager with other managers? How does that work?
That's a method that's employed by several different firms now, but there was one leading firm that was a kind of a pioneer in the area. That particular firm will set up an assessment center that has writing application forms. They'll have role-playing forms. They'll have those types of things. And they will employ managers or assistant managers from wherever to sit and evaluate each one of those exercises. Generally, there are 4 of them. And then you, as an assessor, actually give your group's opinion of their performance on your measure to the council, and then the council takes that and with the consultant will actually make a selection.
Okay. Mr. Spears, did you have a question, sir?
So my memory serves me a little bit differently. Since I've been here, we've hired you. We've hired a new city attorney. We've hired a new police chief and fire chief. Ultimately, all of those decisions were made by us.
Yes, sir.
The HR director did advise us, but the decision was totally ours to make. I'm just going to ask, are we giving away that power by including other folks or giving Clayton the ability to advertise these jobs? Because if I'm not mistaken, these past 4 positions, we didn't advertise.
That's correct, and that's one of the reasons that your rules are being brought forward for you to change tonight, because I believe there was at least some consensus on council that you needed to at least advertise for these positions, even if you selected an internal candidate. And so that's the reason the process has been put into your rules of order. I would say that you are not giving up your power, because you always have the authority to go back through the entire applicant pool if you want to, whether you hire someone or whether you vest that with your HR director. But I think you still have the ultimate authority to make the decision how you narrow that group down to be able to a manageable number to interview, because certainly you wouldn't want to interview 96 of them, as the mayor would say. So you divest your authority, so to speak, to either a private firm or your HR director, or perhaps it's a subcommittee of council who does that. But you usually divide that up so that you don't, all 7 of you aren't involved and having to spend so much time and to work out differences in viewpoints of certain resumes or applications.
But the 7 of us, well, the 7 at that time did come to a consensus. I
Yes.
mean, I was definitely adamant for us to open some of those positions up, just not to say that who was being advised to us was not a good option, but I always think that cream will always rise to the top. So if we had the best people here, they would outshine anybody else that would come here. So I still believe that. So I'm uncertain on that at this point, but I also want to go back to this, the agenda briefing portion of this, which we changed the rules, but we hadn't really abided by those rules. When we changed the council's rules of orders, we changed it where, because of the remote capability was taken away, that we would conduct those the closed session meetings after the regular council meeting, and I think we've done it maybe once.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So if we're going to move back to having the closed sessions after the agenda briefings, then someone's going to have to reinstall or re-implement the remote piece.
My recollection, and my recollection is that your previous rules of order didn't say whether it had to be after the regular meeting or after the agenda briefing, but regardless, this says specifically it will be after the agenda briefing. In terms of closed session, It was Mr. Joy's opinion that remote participation in meetings could be justified in defense of, in a courtroom setting, so long as it didn't include, and I'm going to look over here at Mr. Evans at the same time, so long as it didn't include a quasi-judicial decision, or there was not a decision that was so split that that one member would be the deciding vote. In terms of whether you did that for a closed session or not, Mr. Joy said, as I recall at the time, and he wrote the biggest overhaul of these, as I recall, he said that it would be better if you could do it in person, but if you wanted to allow remote meetings, as long as it wasn't quasi-judicial and it wasn't the deciding vote, he thought he could probably defend that.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we went with. I'm 1,000% certain that's not what we went with. We took away the remote capability.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We did that.
Your current rules of order essentially say that, and I'm paraphrasing, essentially say that unless you're more than 50 miles away and for some sort of reason, a business reason or something like that,
Yeah.
that you cannot participate remotely.
Yeah, my business reason is work.
Yes, sir.
Daily. Because the city council doesn't pay like that.
Yes, sir.
Right, and I do work I don't work 50 miles away, but I work about 20
Yes, sir.
miles away. So, yeah, so I'm just putting it out there that if we're not talking about re-implementing that remote piece, I'm not on board.
Well, the remote piece is not in tonight's revisions. It is already in the rules, but it is not in tonight's revisions.
Then I'm gonna make a motion that we continue, or I'm gonna make a substitute motion that we add it. Whatever can be done.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The remote piece is only for the closed session. The remote piece, you still participate remotely when you're participating.
Right, but I mean, because we changed the council's rules of orders, I've missed every closed session since. We vote on it, and you all vote yes, let's go into closed session. I think once I voted no, you still go into closed session, but I'm not here. I don't get the information. I may get a call afterwards, but I mean, what was the purpose of us doing it? There was no real reason to do it. Which I know why we did it, but there's no reason to go back to that, but that's over with now. So if we're bringing it back now, so soon, then clearly somebody acknowledges that we screwed up, so let's fix it.
It's up to us. I mean, this is what we're here to talk about. Tony, in respect to the closed sessions, and I guess this is more of a question of attorney's office, when those things are brought, and you know, I think, Charlie, you mentioned at one time that they were more rare in circumstance many years ago. It seems like they've become more prevalent in the last couple of years, where we're having a closed session almost every other meeting. And I don't know if that's just litigation that we're dealing with that we have to deal with immediately, or can it wait, or, you know, do we, I'm just going to throw something up, just as Ms. Andrews alluded to, about the possibility of coming in here about a half an hour earlier to have it on a Tuesday night and just do it on Tuesday. I mean, I know it's not your decision. It's something that we're here to talk about. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. I think at the time when the remote issue came up with the closed session, was concerned about and I'm not pointing the finger at you by no means, Mr. Spears, if there was somebody in the room, we didn't know if somebody would be there. The being able that we had, like we had when we were doing a lot of the remote meetings during COVID, where people were kind of breaking into the meetings, and for some way, somehow they were able to get into those meetings and create a little havoc. I don't know if the city's attorney's office can give us a little bit more, I guess, direction as to, can those be bundled in a much more systematic or more precise time frame, or is it first come, first serve as you need them?
I think the answer is yes and no.
Yes and
Certain things we can schedule, like, for example, when we bring condemnations before council, generally we like to have a closed session beforehand just to let council members know what's going on, and it has to do with litigation. Other times it's possible that something could pop up, more of an emergency situation that's going on where it is important to have one right of way, but certainly we can make a better effort to schedule the things that are more controllable so that we can potentially have less of them. I think I follow what you're saying.
All right, Ms. Andrews.
Okay, so I'm uncomfortable with this item on a lot of different levels. First of all, this is an item that's being brought to us by a committee that is no longer in existence. We don't have a governance committee anymore. Maybe we need to have a governance committee to review this and the entire rules of procedure so we can get some clarity on what the current council wants to do with the rules of procedure. Secondly, you know, 2 of the members who were on this committee are no longer on this body. So again, I think we need to get direction from this body as to where we want to go with our rules of procedure. I'm very uncomfortable with the first item as far as making it essentially so that Councilmember Spears or any future council member who has a day job would be unable to participate in closed sessions. I think that the citizens have voted for these council members, voted to re-elect Councilmember Spears, even though his rights to participate were limited back in the spring. They still voted to return him to office, and I think it gives, it sends a bad message to the people who have to work for a living, who aren't, I'm self-employed, so I have a very understanding boss, but not everybody is that lucky, so I'm really concerned about that item. I'm also concerned about the fact that I don't even know what the problem is with the way we hire our statutory employees. It doesn't seem like there's something that's broken that needs to be fixed, and since I don't have the report of the committee in front of me, I don't even know what the concern was there. It does say that we're going to give the authority to the HR director to decide whether to go out and hire a search firm or to form a committee of employees or whatever. That, to me, again, is the prerogative of the council. That's what we were elected to do. And I don't think there's been any problem that we couldn't handle on a case-by-case basis to decide whether for any particular employee that we appoint, that there's an opening for, how we handle that in that given situation. Do we hire a search firm? Or do we ask the HR director to step in? So I don't see that putting that in the rules of procedure, the council rules of procedure, is necessarily the way to handle this. I don't see where the problem was. So I really can't support either of these issues.
Let me be clear. One reason it's back before you this evening is because we decided that it would be more appropriate for the new council to decide on its own rules of order. Second of all, I understand that I'm the one presenting, but I'm not advocating for anything. Right. Whatever the council wants to do with regard to the rules of order, certainly up to them. All we'll do is help you enforce them once you get them adopted.
I appreciate that answer, and as I said, perhaps we need to reform the governance committee to go over the rules of order so that this new council can decide how we want to move forward on the rules of order.
Mr. Barnett.
I remember one time, Tony, you mentioned that for closed sessions, because we don't have them as often, that you couldn't kind of schedule them so that we could do them, let's say, on a Tuesday or Tuesday night.
Absolutely. We can do them anytime council wants them done.
Okay.
I will say, just for the mayor's point, there are times when we're going to hold a closed session and somebody says, oh, well, since we're going to hold one, let's go ahead and do this item as well. We certainly can batch them in bunches like bananas.
Okay. All right, because I know in the rules it said something about we wouldn't have a meeting longer than, let's say, midnight. I know we said that. But then I know you had a way of being able to schedule or select when we were going to have a closed session. Okay. So I'd be more in favor of having it where everybody is here. And I remember someone wrote us and said, that this is the only real quote-unquote meeting that we're obligated to attend. One of the citizens wrote that in a long letter.
Anytime that you have a published schedule or you have a call for a meeting, it is a meeting of council, regardless of whether it's an agenda briefing or whether it's a Tuesday night meeting. It's an official meeting regardless, and any action can be taken that's on the agenda.
Okay. I know that, okay, Mr. Amar, go ahead.
First 6 years I served on this council from 93 till about 98, we never had closed sessions because we had two people, the mayor and the mayor pro tem, that called them secret meetings. And the Star News newspaper made a huge deal out of it. I'm talking about real estate transactions, personnel, everything. So the other 5 of us started having closed sessions. And you can do them on a PRN status. If you need one, you do one. We never had a set time that you, like before, after, we didn't even have agenda briefings in those days, so that was not even an option. So, but they're closed sessions for a reason. I mean, that's why they call them closed sessions. And we discuss some very sensitive issues. And I always was a little concerned about who's listening in, people breaking in. It's not healthy. It's not good. It's not legal. And some of the verbiage I've read regarding quasi-judicial, it doesn't have any mention in there about you're not allowed to talk to anybody. The only thing you're considering is what's presented at that podium on the night of by people with standing. So that needs to be plugged in, because as it is now with conditional use permits, we get calls, we get pulled from one side to the other, and it's okay. But with a special use permit, quasi-judicial, that's taboo. And I hope people respect that, because if it ever got out that we did it, they'd go right straight across the street, and we'd be in a world of hurt. So this governance committee that we did, damn, I didn't ask to be on it. And this wasn't something that we threw together in 2 meetings. This thing went on for 3 years. And it was not just rules of council that we discussed. Every time we'd go there, we had a whole new menu of things we were discussing, and they were all brought back to this council for comment, approval, take it back. So these things weren't dreamed up on a whim. They were put there for a very specific reason. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Spears.
Well, I don't think the quasi-judicial was the issue. We never attempted to, since I've been on council, when we've had a quasi-judicial issue, we've all been in person. So that's not it. Like I said, the remote capability for the closed session, not the quasi-judicial, not anything else, just for the closed session that follows the agenda briefing. And and you've seen it yourself, if I'm not at work, I come right in here. But if I'm at work, I'm not going to not go to work to come here for a closed session. It's just not going to happen.
Mr. Waddell.
The ad hominem examples never were interesting to me. I don't. The ad hominem examples were never interesting to me. It was always, as Councilman Rivenbark said, about maintaining these closed sessions are closed sessions for a reason, and having them, so we're talking about sensitive items, opening up to the digital world is just unnecessarily getting us into a precarious situation, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, I think it's important for the full body to be present and discuss. So I have no issues with when we do it. I really don't. But I do believe that we need to have, unless there's some, whatever the provisions are in there about, some circumstance outside of that we should, as a standard of practice, to maintain the integrity of those conversations, have them in person. Tony, you have a question? Oh, and then to the other, I think I'm a little bit confused, as everybody else is, on what exactly. I've always been of the mind that we should have a policy that anytime one of our appointed positions becomes vacant, that we open it up to the public and receive. So that was not a policy before?
No, sir, not until now.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly in favor of that.
It was kind of arbitrary in respect that each council would either make a decision to go outside if so compelled, or if we felt comfortable with the internal candidate or candidate that had been groomed over the years, as we have seen in the last couple of years, then we would hire the internal candidate, and it was kind of a consensus of council. But that was a decision made by council. It wasn't made by the city manager, the HR director. This policy is different. This policy is mandatory that any vacancy goes, we go do a nationwide search now. Not to say that the internal candidate would not be a person that would qualify, but as
They would compete.
as Kevin alluded to, cream rises to the top, and so you go out and you go do a nationwide search for any particular thing. This would then, it would be mandatory that that council, or this council, with this set of order, would have to go outside for anything. Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of that, and I think it's a good policy to set. I mean, I think we've got some phenomenal folks that, you know, like yourself, Mr. Manager, that have, you know, risen through the ranks, but I just don't see any issues with opening up or creating a policy that opens it up and mandates, you know, a nationwide search.
Might I suggest that if that's the feeling of council, which I seem to glean is going that way, perhaps we could simplify that rule that just basically says you will advertise the position for vacancy in accordance with direction from council or something along those lines.
You know, because we've got a lot of questions up here, and this is a council decision, and it's our rules of order. This is how this body will operate moving forward. And, you know, I thank the previous council and for the efforts and the work they've put into this, and we've adopted a lot of the stuff that they've put in. I do think we need a little bit of a workshop on this. I don't want to make a decision right. At least I'm not comfortable enough, because I think there's some other things I'd like to bring up myself as the mayor, in case the mayor pro tem is not here, and I have to go. There's some couple of things I think we just need to take a look at, but we could do that on a Monday morning. And I would really like to have a little bit more clarity from the city attorney's office about bundling these. I know there's special circumstances that come up that we have to address in closed session. And I'm like, look, I don't have a problem if I do it on a Monday or Tuesday. I do know that some nights, and this is going to be a light night for us, there are some nights that we're here till 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, close to 12 o'clock, and most people are tired, and it is tough to make a decision, a good decision, a clear decision. I shouldn't say you're not going to make a decision. But we could look at possibly doing them earlier, before the meeting starts. I know we all come in here and have a little something to eat before we get to it, and if everybody is okay with that. But, I mean, that's something we can discuss to do it on a Tuesday night. And if it's a light thing, we just do it early in the agenda. If it's going to be a light agenda, we do it later. That's just some of my ideas on it. But I agree that we do need to go out for search. I don't have a problem with that. I think we've had some good internal candidates that have risen to the top. But I would like to have a much clearer understanding of the process, that if you have multiple candidates, how that is going to be relayed to us is very important to me. And I think to other council members.
And as I mentioned, you've done it several different ways.
Yes,
and I would not, if I were council, I would not want to limit my opportunities to choose amongst those several different ways, even though you're going to advertise outside.
Sure. Yeah. Ms. Spears, did you have something? And then Mr. Ravenbark, and then
Yeah,
Ms.
because Councilman Waddell, you did this the last time you bought into the picture of integrity. So since you've been on this council and since I've been on this council, I don't think there's been an issue of integrity. Not at once. No, wait, I'm not done talking. Because this is what's happened. There hasn't been a issue of integrity not once. And as Councilman Barnett said, when we talked about this issue the last time, when we put our hand on the Bible and raised our other hand, we swore to have integrity in this position. So the issue of integrity is not an issue. We wouldn't be here. Well, it's not an issue for me. I think I said that the last time. Maybe an issue for some of us, but it's not an issue for me.
if I may provide just a little bit of clarity on what I meant by the word integrity, I didn't mean integrity of character by any means. It was more integrity of the apparatus and something being open outside of whatever, if I'm sitting in a room in a coffee shop and somebody can see my screen and get some inside information, that's nothing on my integrity or my character. I didn't mean the integrity of character. I simply meant the integrity of the system that we were using.
That's
That could be
not
compromised.
integrity. That's not integrity, Luke. That's stupidity. Why would you sit in a coffee shop and be in a closed session where someone can see your screen? When I'm not here, and I said this the last time, whenever I'm not here, and even during COVID when we attended meetings remotely, I was in my office by myself. When I'm not here in the mornings for agenda briefings, I'm in my office by myself. Now, if you want to be in a remote meeting at Starbucks or Port City, Java, with your screen up and not with earbuds in discussing city business, again, that's not the lack of integrity, that's the lack of intellect.
I may have used an improper word. I simply meant like when the integrity of a structure is compromised and a structure could then fall down. Like that was my intent with the verbiage there. So I think I may have used the wrong word. Yeah, certainly not an ad hominem attack. If it was construed that way, that was not my intent.
Ms. Rumbar? Okay, Ms. Andrews?
So I think we think that we're discussing remote meetings, but we've already decided that back in the spring that we couldn't attend closed sessions remotely. And now it seems like we're closing the noose and saying that the closed sessions are going to only be held when Councilmember Spears can't be here. And I know it doesn't have to be about you. It's about you and anybody else that has to work for a living and can't be here on a Monday morning. And now we're saying in these new proposed rules that we have to hold these closed sessions on Monday mornings when at least one of our members can't be here. I won't say Councilmember Spears, but at least one of our members can't be here, and perhaps a future person who would like to run for office but can't because they can't be here on a Monday morning. I think it's wrong to be prescribing that in the council rules of order. And the other thing is, we're talking about, the intention of the second part of this item was that as a rule, we would like to always go out for a national search. I totally agree with that. But what this says is that the HR director has the authority to decide that. And I don't think that that's something that we want to be putting into our council rules of procedures. I think we can put something in there that says our desire is to always go out for a national search. That's fine. But I don't think we should be giving away our authority to staff to do that.
Mr. Joyner?
May I ask my colleagues, is there anybody who wants to move forward on this tonight, or do we seem to have consensus that we need to figure out a different path forward, or not at all?
I would say the consensus, or at least from my perspective, is to have a work session on an agenda briefing, which is light, and have the discussion then. And we can all make that decision right here from this dais. Just continue to our.
Yes, sir.
When would you like to do that? Because I'd like to get some more information from the city attorney's office. This is what's caused a lot of these issues, is to have the number of closed sessions that we're having. And I understand we're dealing with a lot of easement issues, and we need to address those as quickly as possible. But there's ways that we can do this.
And I would, and actually, Ms. Everhart's been texting me during this conversation, and she said she'd be more than glad to do that. And what we'll do, if you'll just give us 30 days or so to get back to you so that we can do some expectation setting with regard to how others do it, and get some samples of some language, bring that back for you, and then perhaps you'll have some more fruitful discussion about it.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everybody up here that's been up here, people come to you when they want to run for office, whether it's the council, county commission, they always want to kind of get your take on it. And the first thing I tell everybody when they come to me, and I may have mentioned this to Cliff when Cliff and I talked before he ran, have you got the time to give it? Because it's not 2 meetings a month. You got committees, you've got other things that you get appointed to, ad hoc committees, and you have to have the time to do it. Now, I'm not pointing finger at anybody, but I mean, it's a commitment that you make, and nothing is more important than to having everybody at the table when we're making decisions that have effect on our citizenry, the people that elected us. So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I just think it's important that you're here. I have a job too. I work 7 days a week.
Mr. Spears?
You're also in real estate. I really don't want to start the year off like this, but if we have to, we will.
Well, you started it.
Yeah, I did. I'm defending myself, but you started it probably 100 years. Hey, I'm talking. Don't do it.
One at a time, please. Thank
I'm
you.
talking, man. You probably need to go to anger management.
Please.
But anyway, what happens, you the time commitment, what your suggestion is to what? You're involved in real estate. You can come and go as you please. And that was your decision. But have you not heard the citizens who complain about elected officials who are involved in real estate? So we got 2 new members who are not involved in real estate. One is a assistant district attorney. I'm certain you cannot walk around the courtroom with your phone, sir, listening to the agenda briefing, trying to participate. There's some Monday mornings you won't be able to be here either. You know, so it's not about Kevin Spears. It's about what we're trying to do, the precedents we're trying to set, not the precedents we set in 1992 or the precedents we set in 1993. They still had rotary phones then, I believe. We're in a new place. We're trying to usher in new people. So if you really mean that, then you will do something that opens it up for people to participate. What we've done, we changed when we would have the closed sessions, and then we didn't adhere to the rules that we changed to. But we're overlooking that. So I agree with the mayor. I'm not going to prolong this conversation. I agree with the mayor. Let's continue with, have a workshop or whatever we need to have. It doesn't have to get nasty tonight. And then we can do our due diligence on what needs to be done. And we can get the perspective from the city attorney and the city manager about what needs to be done.
Okay, very good. So we'll see you in 30 days. We'll be ready to go? Okay?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay, and then our last order of business is a resolution R2A, which is a resolution appointing A. Penelope Spicer Sidbury as our city clerk, and item O2B, which is to administer the oath of office to A. Penelope Spicer Sidbury, CMC/MMC, as the city clerk by me. So I'm going to ask for the wishes of council in respect to the item R2A. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Andrews. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? That item passes unanimously. At this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk to come forward and so I can administer the oath. Penny, first of all, let me just say, on behalf of the entire city, thank you for the tremendous work that you do for our community. You're the custodian of every document that we approve up there and all of the plans and everything that people ask for. And I just want to say thank you because I know that is a tough job. And it is also good to see a fellow Viking, person I went to high school with, to administer this oath to. So if you will repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Agnes Penelope Spicer Sidbury,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution
and laws of the state of North Carolina,
and laws of the state of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
as city clerk
as city clerk
under this council manager form of government for the city of Wilmington.
under the council manager form of government for the city of Wilmington.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
And how many years has she been serving?
Longer than you've been here.
Wow.
32 years.
Wow.
Incredible.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we conclude the regular agenda. Are there any items to be brought forward by our city attorney, Mr. Evans, tonight?
No, sir, other than, like Tony said, Meredith's been texting me, and we'd be more than happy to come up with some ideas for having fewer potential closed session meetings.
Well, I hope she's feeling better. I know that she's battling a tough cold. Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk? Welcome back.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to working with council for 2 more years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joyner?
No, thank you.
Mr. Waddell?
I said this last year. I'm going to say it again this year and probably the year after that. It's my message to the UNCW men's basketball team to beat the hell out of the College of Charleston this Saturday night.
Mr. Barnett?
Yes. I was honored to give the proclamation to the Community Risk Reduction Week in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King for this week. And one of the things that I kind of challenged the folks in my congregation was that we've got to put our faith in our feet. And basically what I meant by that was that we've got to just not just say we like people or love people or going to be nice to people. It's got to show up in the things that we do. And so I just want to just challenge each of us, you know, that we put our faith in the actions by showing it with what we do with our feet and our hands.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Rodenbach? Ms. Andrews?
We know it's going to get cold tonight, and if you have companion animals, please bring them inside. There is a warming shelter that's opening at 401 Grace Street that does not take animals, but there's also some emergency shelters opening at Eden Village at 2974 McClammy. They are pioneering a new concept of these emergency pods, and they do take pets. So if you have some homeless people that you know of, that you can direct them over there to Eden Village, and they can stay warm tonight with their pets.
Yeah. Spears?
Yes, sir. It's the first meeting back since, well, first official meeting back since being reelected. So again, I want to thank the citizens of the city of Wilmington. And during that swearing in, I got a little caught up. But in the conversation that I had earlier today, I do want to thank Miss Penelope Spicer Sidbury for all she does. She's not just the custodian for the books for the city of Wilmington. She gets all 7 council members. She keeps us informed. She gets us where we need to go. She also, I do believe, I hadn't seen her do it before, but I believe she would stop traffic so that me and the mayor can get somewhere on time. And so I just want to acknowledge her and let her know how much I appreciate her. And it's not just because Tim's sitting in the audience either. It's because she is really dedicated to the city of Wilmington, and I truly appreciate you.
I also want to thank her, too, for keeping me on time, too, or trying to. But tonight is a special night, and we had to cancel our meeting because of the storms last week, but tonight is my mother's birthday. And I'm not with her tonight because I got all her 13 grandkids and my 4 other brothers and sisters and my dad, and they're all celebrating somewhere. So I'll be there shortly, but I just want to wish her a very happy birthday. She immigrated to this country in 1947 and grew up here in Wilmington, went to Union High School, and I'm proud of her. I love her. So happy birthday, Mom. With that, we stand adjourned.